Hello, Sociology. Welcome to the Sociology of Deviance. In this chapter, we're going to look at what deviance is from a sociological perspective. We'll look at different theoretical perspectives, including the symbolic interactionist, the functionalist, and the conflict perspective. We'll look at the definition of crime, types of crime, and the U.S. prison system. So, to begin, we have to define deviance, and sociologists are going to look at the context around an act to identify deviance. So take this quote from Howard Becker in 1966. It is not the act itself, but the reaction to that act that makes something deviant. I am from New Orleans, Louisiana, originally, and from living in the South exclusively for my entire life, I have known many different individuals who have eaten a wide array of food. For my friend who went to India and discovered that in this village they eat monkey brains, that might be shocking. But if someone moves to Mississippi from up north and they find out that people down here, not everyone, but people down here may eat raccoon, possum, goat, any assortment of animals, that might be considered deviant. And so it is the culture that oftentimes determines what deviance is from a sociological perspective. Essentially, deviance is a violation of societal norms. And what is deviant to some won't be deviant to others. You can think of deviance as a non-judgmental term. Sociologists are not necessarily seeing these actions as inherently wrong. We believe in moral absolutes and things being right or wrong. Many of us do on an individual ethical level, but a sociologist has to sort of suspend that as much as possible. In terms of the bias, sociologists like Max Weber would say, our individual biases come in consideration of what topics to study. But once we begin studying, we have to be value neutral and non-judgmental. So that term deviance is oftentimes used negatively. Sociologists will attempt to suspend all personal bias. Irving Goffman talked about stigma and said that a person can be labeled a social deviant simply by being. So for instance, physical handicap could be a stigma. Some kind of crime obviously could be a stigma, but it doesn't necessarily have to be anything that the person does wrong. So simply being from a family who is perceived by the community as rambunctious and deviant, this could be a stigma. But it could also be as simple as someone walking with a cane, using a wheelchair, using a service animal. All of those things could be stigmatized. And a person can have a stigma simply by being part of an involuntary group. If your father had committed a crime, you might be known by the distinction of being son of a criminal. And deviance is possible because of norms. Norms make social life livable. They make behavior predictable. We have informal and formal norms, formal norms being things written into crime, written into law. Informal norms are those which oftentimes influence our behavior. So for instance, the things that you were made fun of at school, these are informal norms. The things that you were negatively sanctioned for in your home, poor table manners, etc. This would be informal. Societies have formal and informal means of enforcing norms, and this is referred to as social control. Sociologists use different theories to explain deviance, but all of them usually look for answers outside of a person. So, sociologist is going to look for things like social class, the impact of socioeconomic status on behavior. So, for instance, the link between poverty and deviance, or education level of parents and deviance. Whereas psychologists will look at things within the person. So the person committed this crime because they have a personality disorder. The sociobiologist would look to genetic predispositions. So, for instance, if you were born to fifth-generation alcoholic parents, the sociobiologist would look to a genetic predisposition because you do have a higher likelihood of becoming an alcoholic because you have this in your genetic ancestry. However, you will not become an alcoholic if you never drink. So sociologists might instead look at those environmental factors that would lend themselves to a person choosing to or to not drink. Edwin Sutherland came up with differential association theory. He said that we learn to deviate by those we associate within our lives. This would include our nuclear family, our friends, and our neighbors. He cited stats like this one. 50% of people in prison also have a father, mother, brother, or sister that have also committed crime. So this lends us to the question of prison or freedom. What were the attitudes about crime in your family? What were the attitudes about the police? Are the police noble, or are the police instruments of systematic oppression and racism? These two opinions are being propagated, they're being very commonly argued and debated, and these are very, very hotly contested and debated items. So my goal for us here is that we would start bringing in some theory and some science, so that we're just not bantering back and forth in an unfriendly way. So symbolic interactionists, like Edwin Sutherland, like Travis Hershey, argue that crime is explained at the micro level. So Travis Hershey says this: we all want to commit deviant acts, but we don't because of inner and outer controls, with this caveat. The stronger your outer controls, such as attachments, commitments, involvements, then the stronger your inner controls are going to be: conscience, morals, religious beliefs, etc. I oftentimes ask my students to tell me of a time when they thought of something that they wanted to do. It was something that was not good, not a good thing. I do not ask them to tell me what that thing was, but I specifically am interested in their rationale. What kept them from that deviant act? Maybe it was breaking curfew when you knew it wasn't the best thing. Perhaps it was skipping school when you knew it wasn't the best thing. That could be anything. But if you chose not to, what things led to that choice? You might have said, my conscience. You might have said, my religious beliefs or my personal morals. Those are internal. Travis Hershey, being a symbolic interactionist and a sociologist, would say that it is the external attachments. So for instance, it is a stronger relationship you have with your mom. You don't want to hurt your mom's feelings. Therefore, your religious beliefs are what they are. That yes, your conscience, it lends itself to getting you out of these poor choices, but it's the stronger relationships in society, right? You don't want to lose that scholarship spot that you have, that opportunity. You don't want to lose that letter of recommendation that you're working on. And the more entrenched in society you are, the more integrated in the society you are, and the stronger those internal controls to keep you from deviant activity. Howard Becker came up with something called labeling theory. Labeling theory says that labels propel us into deviance or will divert us away from deviance. So my question here is, what kind of things, again, keep you from deviant activity? So Becker says that deviants have 5 ways in which they reject labels. So these people who consistently are breaking laws and going to jail, they have only 5 different ways of negotiating this. So they're not going to see themselves as true criminals because they're denying responsibility, right? Yes, I stole the car, but I'm not really to blame because the car was just out there and the keys were in it. Denial of injury. Sometimes you get this denial of injury. Well, no one was really hurt. I mean, what am I doing wrong? Yeah, I broke the law, but I didn't hurt him. This idea of a victimless crime. In the case where there's clearly a victim, the third technique is simply saying that the person really is not a true victim. That, yes, perhaps I did take something from them, but obviously they have plenty. Obviously they're doing okay. So they're not really, I didn't physically hurt them. Then you have a condemnation of condemners. Well, look at the police, look at what they're doing. So what I'm doing is not really bad because of them. And then you have appealing to a higher loyalty, which basically says, yes, I broke the law, but I did so because I have a higher responsibility. And it could be this code of honor that I hold myself to. An individual I can remember who bombed an abortion clinic and who appealed to a higher loyalty of God and his belief in his pro-life belief, and he used that to basically neutralize that label. Now, moving to the functionalist perspective, can deviance be functional? According to Durkheim, deviance is functional because it affirms moral boundaries, it promotes social unity, and third, promotes social change. Now, to my students, I oftentimes have said that if I had a conversation with Durkheim, I might say something like this. I would say that it is the reaction to deviance that is functional and not the act itself. But regardless, you need to know Durkheim's 3 functions of deviance. So it has the function of affirming boundaries, promoting unity, promoting social change. Another functionalist perspective, famous Robert Merton, created strain theory. He said that we are all socialized to want certain cultural goals, but we do not all have the means to attain those goals. So for instance, if you've watched TV at all, you probably have been socialized to want wealth. Wealth is everywhere on television, it's everywhere on YouTube, it's everywhere on TikTok. You probably know of social media superstars who are only 20 and they're millionaires because so many people watch their videos. And what Merton would say to this is that we're conditioned to want wealth. That's the cultural goal. But we don't all have the same legitimate path. All right, so there's only one legitimate path towards goal, which is going to school, getting a job, making money. So what he talked about is essentially society creates deviance because of its goals. People develop a sense of strain and a sense of anomie. Now, anomie is a good sociological word crafted by Emile Durkheim. It simply means without norms. Anomie in a mild sense is if you've ever wanted to call up your friend to find out what they're wearing to a social event. The reason why you have some anxiety about what to wear is because you don't know for sure. So you call someone, you sort of read the room, so to speak. And that reduces your anxiety because you know you're not going to be the only person. So a person who is normlessness, who has anomie, is a person who doesn't know norms. And essentially, poverty is influenced by the sense of normlessness. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to get wealthy, right? You don't know how to get enough money to buy food. You don't know how to get enough money just to have nice clothes and to get a car. It would seem as though, if you live in a very impoverished environment with terrible schools, going to school doesn't really work because lots of people who made straight A's and they're out of work and they're living right in your hometown. So what he says that the number one way that most people negotiate this is simply by conforming. So a person conforms to the cultural goal of going to school, getting a job, trying to make money as best as they possibly can. But below conformity, you have 4 paths to deviance. The innovators, you could also call them the hustlers. These are people who are getting their side hustle. They want to achieve the cultural goal of wealth, but school is not for them. Work is not for them, they would say. So they're going to create illegitimate opportunity. These could be this could be folks as extreme as drug dealers who quit school to become a lucrative narcotics dealer. This could be anybody who's pursuing this fast money that you hear folks talk about. But it could also be something as simple and benign as a kid in your high school selling blow pops out of their locker. I did know a couple kids actually, who seemed to be doing pretty well selling things kids want, blow pops, Snickers, Skittles, and they had something of an illegitimate snack shop right out of their locker. So they'd simply look this way and have a couple of lookouts and swing the door open. Perhaps he gives first one free.